Does everyone have a glass of champagne or something nearby, just in case? If not, there's extras down here, which you can come and grab. My name is Jason Bobby. I'm the CFO of the company, and I have the dubious distinction for, I don't know, several years now, of being in between you and dinner and drinks. So I don't know why I always get the short shrift, but as Bob likes to remind me, just because I'm necessary doesn't mean I'm important. So. Yeah. So the reason we have the champagne here is a little thing that we do, and it's really about how we are using and utilizing Shibumi internally to run our business. We are 70 people strong as of today, growing very, very rapidly. When we started this presentation a few years ago, we only had the first few rows filled, and it's great to see a full auditorium here today. I actually had a hard time finding a newspaper. I wanted to use this as a prop to start things off, but they really don't carry these many places anymore. And about 30 years ago, people would walk, and we use this analogy quite a bit. People would walk down to the end of their porch, end of their driveway on an average morning, and pick up the newspaper and look at stock quotes. And before the advent of iPhones and Google Finance and everything else, that was the way that you understood, your portfolio status. And the quotes were a day old, and that's how you would make your investment decisions. What was the stock price of IBM? What was the stock price of 3M? Whatever it might be. And I would have to think probably at some point during the day on one of the breaks, most people at least at some point probably picked up their phone and just checked to see what the market was doing or something like that to get real-time information, because that's what's at our fingertips now, and that's what actually makes sense for us to make investment decisions. The interesting thing is that for most companies, having real-time data or even data from a day ago is a luxury that most would actually kill for. Most people are actually getting data that's 30 days old. Sometimes they're getting quarterly reports that they're actually making decisions on. And so if I had to ask you, if you were about to make an investment decision in Tesla, if you were about to buy a house and looking at mortgage rates, if you were about to make a decision to invest or put something into Japan, based off of data from 3-6 months ago, how good do you think those decisions would be? And the Japanese yen is one of many. I didn't want to bring up the Aussie dollar or the British pound. It's a little too close to home for some of the people in the audience today. But the moves and the volatility and just the scope of change that's happened in the past year is for a lot of things, and for a lot of businesses, for a lot of strategic decisions, really earth-shattering. And there's a saying that there are decades where nothing happens, and then there's weeks where decades happen. And I think we're seeing quite a bit of that in 2022. And I think most of the prognosticators are saying that 2023 probably holds quite a bit more. So at Shibumi, we're actually using data. And I think most of the companies, especially the ones that I saw today presenting, Steve, Michael, Tina, and I know some of the advisory partners that were up on the panel, are talking about how you're using that data to make better decisions. Data itself is great. Knowledge is not power. It's the potential for power, but you need to take action. And I loved, I don't know where Bill's sitting, but Bill's presentation earlier this morning, he talked quite a bit about strategy, but it's not really the strategy that moves things. It's the execution of the strategy. It's taking that data, taking that knowledge, and putting it into effect. And for the execution, the dependencies, all the other things that were tied together, and Mark was showing, Kim was showing, Bob talked a little bit about in the keynote this morning. It's the dependencies, and it's all the activities that go along with that data and putting it into execution that really matter. We are actually using Shibumi as our business operating system, is the term that I like to call it. And we drink our own champagne. So we run every single aspect of our business on Shibumi, for better or for worse. We are the skunk works for a lot of the things that you're seeing rolled out. We like to make sure that the UX is something that if we don't like to use it, I can guarantee that none of you are going to like to use it. If we find limitations in the way that we're able to present data, that we're able to represent it, that we're able to forecast it, I guarantee you and your clients are going to encounter the same problems, and you'll be coming back to us for some changes. So we try to run everything. This is not kind of dispositive of everything that's going on in the business, but it is very circular and of how everything feeds into one another. So for sales, we actually use Shibumi as a quasi CRM. So we do our weekly weekly forecasts. We do our quarterly business reviews on Shibumi, and all that data is contained within there. We can get regular updates on as things are moving through the pipeline, as new opportunities are presented. We get status updates for either partners. For Brian, we're getting updates and with Brightfire as we're seeing new potential partners come in, and as well as our field sales reps in the United States and in the UK and EMEA and all throughout Asia Pac. And it's very powerful in that it allows us, I think, even within a certain silo, even just within sales, it allows us to make much, much better decisions on how we're thinking about investing our resources, how we're investing our time, and what we're doing to actually grow the sales process. Where it becomes extremely powerful is when you actually start to tie all of these things together. So the sales data and our ability to forecast with pretty good accuracy of where we're actually going to end the quarter feeds into a finance dashboard that myself and a few of the other members of our team are looking at on a regular basis. We understand that if we can close a deal by mid-October, late October, if a deal may actually slip until November, that's going to have a direct effect on our cash flow. That's going to have a direct effect on profitability, on a lot of different things that we're trying to forecast and making decisions with. From that, the finance, understanding our cash flow, understanding any limitations on that, will feed into our HR. Are we actually in a position where we think we can actually hire new people? Do we need to hire new people because of the way that, do we have the capacity to actually manage the business? And do we have the resources to invest that capital in bringing new people in? And from HR, it cycles into the other aspects of the organization. Do we have the resources to bring on more developers, to create new features and functionality that will then drive the sales funnel? As they say about development, their sole purpose is to actually develop the things that the salespeople sold their customers a few months ago. And so keeping ahead of the game and trying to understand where we need to be from that is something that I think without our internal use of Shibumi would be nearly impossible. Or by and large, we'd be spending a lot of times in management meetings, copying notes back and forth, and trying to decipher a lot of different Excel spreadsheets and things like that. The beautiful thing as a CFO, and when you can actually get to that, to the level of information that we have, and not necessarily just in those silos that I talked about, but across the organization, is that the data can actually be distilled and curated in a way that, at least for a senior stakeholder in the business, I don't need to see everything. I don't need to understand where we are in an agile development cycle. I don't need to know every deal that's going into our sales pipeline at any particular time. And I don't need to understand every little thing we're doing from an accounts payable and accounts receivable perspective. What I do care about and what actually matters to me. And in Shibumi, through the use of business rules and a handful of other dashboards and cool whiz-bang things that Kim talked about today, and I'm sure she'll talk about tomorrow through the windshield, I'm able to get notified. So what changed that might cause me to change my assumptions? Did we lose a deal? Are we looking at potentially upsizing something? Did the currency change? Am I looking at something that, now one of the investments that I was planning on making in the Asia Pac region actually became a lot more affordable, at least from a US dollar perspective. So now I'm willing to accelerate that. What has changed? And I can get alerted on a lot of those different things. And then more importantly, through the mapping of all the dependencies and things like that, what impact is that going to have? because that's really what Shibumi is all about. I mean, there's a lot of project management tools out there. We talked a lot about the benefits of what Shibumi is, and it's being able to track value over time. It's really what kind of results are we going to deliver, and Shibumi is really purpose-built to satisfy that solution. The great thing is it's working. I know Bob had this slide up a little bit earlier this morning. We've been able to grow at a great pace. This is our top line revenue, but and it's accelerating because we're getting better. We're getting better. We're talking. We've talked a little bit about the concept of shuhari. We're getting better at understanding what we need to do as a business, how we need to drive it, and really what's impacting that. And it's not just the top line. We're getting more efficient on the back end. When we run our SOC 2 audit process, what used to take months now takes a matter of days or weeks, and we get absolutely no feedback from the auditors or anyone else that they're concerned about the way that we're running things. And that's a great testament to the ability of Shibumi to manage and track a lot of those things. So we are on a journey. We're actually following this, the shuhari. I mean, it's a great topic for the conference today. But we're on that path as well, and we're looking to get that understanding. We're probably hopefully a little bit farther along in the process of innovating and mastery of that process. But we're searching for that effortless perfection ourselves. And what we need to do to better anticipate the needs. I know Bob talked a little bit about understanding innovation and then that mastery where you can actually anticipate changes. And it's great to see and hear people talk about the ability for machine learning and AI and things like that to be introduced into the product. And we're very hopeful and looking for that to come in the coming years as we evolve and as we get to that process of because when you can actually anticipate needs before they happen, you can run a much more lean and efficient organization. So in your organizations, or the organizations that you're actually advising, we talked a lot about, I think, more so individual types of these, I guess we call them apps. Or practices. So it's digital transformation, there might be some cost transformation, RPA, things like that people are managing. But I can assure you from a CFO's perspective, having this data tied in, not just one program, but all of them tied in together, has certainly helped me. I know it's certainly helped Bob and the rest of our management team, make much, much better decisions. So as you're thinking about your own path of shuhari, think not necessarily just about one particular program that you might be running, but in some of the most evolved programs, and I saw a little bit of this with Steve's presentation and Tina and Michael as well. They're starting to look at this much more broadly across the organization as a discipline that touches all different aspects of the business. And when you can actually do that, and when you actually get to that level of evolution, the data that we talked about becomes much, much more actionable, and that strategy becomes something that's, I think much more powerful. And so, as you're out there, we should aspire to really bring this as an organizational discipline that everyone can actually use. And I think that's how we get to that part. There's a great quote that this is actually a French poet from the early 1900s that perfection is achieved, not when nothing more is left to add, but when there's nothing left to take away. I actually think the guy might have been a bean counter or a CFO, because that's the way that we typically like to look at the world. But I think in today's world, it's extremely important and relevant with potentially some storm clouds on the front and a business cycle that has been getting a little long in the tooth. That we look at how we're delivering value and making sure that we could communicate that we're delivering value. For CFOs, we love to tighten the belt. And in an environment where there's a lot of uncertainty, where there's a lot of volatility and risk, I think you're going to start to see a lot more of that from your clients and from the CFOs in each of your respective organizations. You know, Hemingway said, was asked how he went bankrupt, and his response was, you know, 2 ways: gradually and then suddenly. And I think, unfortunately, you know, depending on the types of headwinds that we're facing and we see over the coming years, I think the preferred approach for most CFOs, and I could certainly say it from my perspective, is that you want to do these things gradually. I would love to be able to take a scalpel, excise just a little bit of the extra costs where we don't see ourselves performing too well. And I would never like to get to the point where a hatchet comes out and you just start doing things wholesale. But for those of us that have been around in business cycles for the last 20, 25 years, invariably that's what ends up happening. And a lot of times the baby gets thrown out with the bathwater. So as Bill talked about, I think a little bit in his presentation this morning, there's quite often a lot of programs, strategies are approved during a budget cycle. They get put in place, and then the folder gets put on the shelf, and no one starts to really look at the value that they're actually delivering until it's too late. The nice thing about Shibumi is that value is front and center when you see it. We are so excited, and I know Angie talked a little bit this morning about the Automation Anywhere partnership and the things that they're doing with the COE. But I think that's just one particular example of how companies are actually demonstrating the value of the programs that they have in flight. Because it's not just the things that you're doing, it's maybe the things that you should stop doing. And are they continuing to have value? And if, as a CFO or, you know, as a person within the company, as a stakeholder for making sure that you're delivering value, ensuring that the things that you're continuing to do are basically front and center and generating ROI are going to be the things that make sure that you know, when the CFO does bring that hatchet out, there's not a target on your favorite program, because you can actually demonstrate the ROI. So I just wanted to wrap up with this quote that Bob had this morning, and from Charles Darwin: "It's not the strongest that survives; it's the one that's most adaptable to change." Looping that in with the concept of shuhari and aspiring to be better, aspiring to innovate. I said this to our employees the other night at an internal meeting, and I'm going to say it to you, and it's fantastic to see so many partners and customers here today. But you're all here today not because you're going to get a free glass of champagne. You're not here because you're enjoying the beautiful Detroit weather that unfortunately is plaguing us for tonight's dinner. You're here because you're thought leaders. You're here because you have a purpose. You're here because you actually care what's going on in your business. You're here because you want to change, because you understand innately that if you don't change, the business may not survive. Or at least it's not going to survive in the way that you'd like it to. So I think a lot of you, just by the virtue of being here, by embracing the platform that we've built and developed, you're already on that path to shuhari. You probably just didn't know it. So I want to make a toast. I want to thank everyone for participating, for a fantastic day. I think I've heard a lot on the conversations and over the breaks that people have had. Just a tremendous amount of insight into Shibumi and the way that everyone's using it. So thank you very much. Thank you for participating, and hopefully you could speak to some of the Shibumi people tonight, and we could help you achieve that journey to shuhari. Thank you.